Hello, I'm Ben Moore, Finance Manager for the Office of Community Assistance, and I will be providing a fiscal update on the Weatherization program. First, I'd like to provide an update on the 2020 program grants. So the 2020 IWOP grant cleanup closeout process will be coming up. The 2020 DOE grants, grant number 17403, those expire on June 30th, which is the end of this month. And the closeout and the reconciliation for those grants will be due by August 14th, 2020. I did want to make you aware that DOE has extended the current grant for one additional year. So any unexpended funds from this grant series must be utilized by the end of the 2021 program year, which is 6/30 of 2021 or next June, or those funds must be sent back if we don't utilize them all by the end of next program year. So any unspent DOE funds from this program year may be available for LAAs through modifications once all the reconciliations have been finalized for this year. The 2020 HHS and state grants, grant series number 19221 and 22251, expire on September 30th, 2020. And the closeouts and the reconciliations for those grants will be due by November 14th of 2020. Any unexpended funds from the HHS, which is the 19221 grant series, must be sent back to HHS if not utilized by the grant end date of 9/30/2020. So we would ask that all grantees please make every effort to ensure that all funds from this grant series are expended by the end of the grant, which is the end of September. We will be providing a reconciliation procedure letter within the next few weeks. That'll be distributed to the The 2021 weatherization grants are currently being processed. The weatherization grants are in the process of being reviewed. If you have received weatherization budget correction requests from OCA Fiscal, we ask that you please address them and get the budgets resubmitted as soon as possible. The next steps are that once your grant budget has been reviewed and approved, you will receive a notice of state award. This will be sent to grantees via notice from the GATA grantee portal. That'll be for electronic approval. You will then receive a notice of grant award. Once your grant has been signed and executed, that will be sent from OCA Fiscal via email for your signature. And I apologize, not once it's been executed, but once your grant agreement has been generated, it will be sent to you via email for signature. And then once the grant has been executed, the finalized grant documents will be sent to you via email. The next topic I'd like to cover is the carryover of the 2020 weatherization, the HHS, and the state grants. Those grant series again are 19221 and 22251. The 2020 state, which is 22251, and the HHS 19221 weatherization grants do not end until September 30th, 2020, as I mentioned earlier. As was the case in the last couple of program years, due to limitations in the WeatherWorks system regarding grants extending beyond one state fiscal year, special steps will need to be taken to accommodate the date extensions in WeatherWorks. OCA has created a separate funding source to represent the months of July, August, and September for these two grants in WeatherWorks. And those grant numbers are the original grant number for the HHS weatherization was 19221. The new funding source that has been created in WeatherWorks to accommodate this grant for the 3 months that it will be active in the 2021 program year is HHS carryover and then the grant number 19221. Similarly, the state 2251 grant for the 3 months in 2021 that grant is active, the WeatherWorks grant number, the grant name for that grant will be state carryover with the grant number 2251. These two new funding sources will maintain the grant numbers from the original grants, as I mentioned above, 19221 and 2251. The newly created funding sources will be represented in the WeatherWorks system as follows. So in your grid of grants on the WeatherWorks system, you will see the HHS carryover, and it doesn't display the whole name, but it will say 19221 and your grant number. And for the state carryover, the title will be state carryover, and in parentheses, the grant number 2251 in your agency's individual grant number. So how does this carryover impact LA activities when working with these grants? Well, the LAs will be essentially able to continue, assess, and weatherize homes as normal during this transition period. Of course, we have to take in the accommodations needed for COVID-19 protocols, which Mick Prince has addressed in broadcasts and has been working with each grantee to determine their ability to get back in the field. But COVID notwithstanding, you should be able to have normal activity on this grant during the transition period. LAs will need to provide some information to OCA to allow us to determine the amount of each extended grant to be available for the 2021 program. The only exception to normal weatherization processing in WeatherWorks is that all costs for a single home must be included in their entirety in a single program year. By that, we mean that a home that is paid for with these grants must be completed either entirely in the 2020 program year before you provide your final cost, or that home must be rolled over and completed in 2021. What we don't want is some of the costs for a home being finalized as part of your 2020 costs on WeatherWorks and the balance of that home's costs being finalized in the 2021. You need to have all of the costs in the final for each home paid for with this grant, either entirely in the 2020 program in WeatherWorks or in the 2021. So what information must LAs provide to OCA in order to establish your carryover grants, your HHS and state carryover grants in the WeatherWorks system? Well, all Weatherization LAs must notify OCA once they have finalized the cost related to all homes in WeatherWorks for the 2020 program for the two grants we've been discussing, HHS and state. And they need to submit a screenshot of these finalized costs on the WeatherWorks tracker. This process requires two steps. First of all, you'll need to upload a screenshot of your 2020 final cost for each grant, and that's the screenshot of your Weatherization tracker identifying those final costs. You'll need to update or upload that screenshot for each your 19221 and your 2251 grant, and you will upload them to the OCA extranet, and the library name you're going to be using, or that you will upload those to, is the C/LAA grant application document submission. When you're uploading that, you need to select the document type, final 2020 WeatherWorks cost. That should be an available document type in the dropdown as you're uploading those documents, so those screenshots. So after you've uploaded your screenshots showing your final costs for the 2020 program from the WeatherWorks tracker for both the HHS and the state grant, you will send an email notification that your 2020 costs for each grant have been finalized. And this email will be sent to your LAA's assigned weatherization specialist, your weatherization tech. And I would like you to copy Janet Hawes-Davis, Judy Hunt, and myself, Ben, Fiscal office, and additionally copy Mick Prince, the weatherization manager, and Wayne Hartle, the assistant weatherization program manager. Make sure you include all of us on that email so that everyone is aware that your 2020 costs in WeatherWorks have been finalized. So the sooner an LAA submits the final cost for the 2020 program year, the sooner OCA will be able to establish the 2021 budgets in WeatherWorks for these grants. Ultimately, this information should, however, be submitted to OCA no later than Friday, July 17th, 2020. I'd like you to make sure that all costs for 2020 jobs charged to these grants are final before notifying OCA that the 2020 costs on these grants are final. In the past, we've had grantees who have submitted final costs, and then after they've submitted it and we have set up the new budget, which is the remaining amount for that grant in the 2021 program year for WeatherWorks, we've had grantees go back and change the 2020 costs, which can cause a problem. So if there are extenuating circumstances that prevent you from providing the final cost before July 17th, the July 17th deadline, please notify OCA. Don't just submit incorrect costs just to meet the deadline. This is one of those rare cases where it's better to be late than incorrect. So once an LIA has notified OCA that all costs for final homes in 2020 have been entered into the WeatherWorks system, OCA staff can establish the HHS carryover and the state carryover grants for use in the program 2021 in the WeatherWorks system. This will allow LIAs to continue working in these two grants and enter homes and associated costs in WeatherWorks. Although the WeatherWorks system cannot accommodate grants that cross over state fiscal years, which is the reason that we have to utilize this this separate process in WeatherWorks. Despite that, the GRS system has been adjusted to accommodate this, and all costs for these two grants, HHS and state weather from 2020, will continue to be entered in cash requests made from the original grant number. So the different methods in which WeatherWorks system accommodates the grant extensions will result in one grant in GRS system being made up of two funding sources or grants in the WeatherWorks system. And so below is a little grid that should hopefully help you understand which WeatherWorks grants equate to which GRS grants. So your HHS grant number in GRS is 19221, your grant number, your agency number at the end. That grant will remain the same. It runs from the beginning of the grant back in July 1st of 19 all the way to the end of September of 2020. However, on WeatherWorks, as we've been discussing, we've had to separate that into two grants on WeatherWorks, one for the 2020 program year and one for the 2021. So in order to look at the total costs for your one grant, the 19221 on GRS, you will need to add up the costs from the HHS 19221 funding source on WeatherWorks in the 2020 program year, and you will need to add to that the HHS carryover 19221 grant amounts in the 2021 program year for WeatherWorks. Similarly, in the state grant, the 2251 grant number under GRS will remain consistent and covers the whole grant period. But in order to get the cost to be submitted on GRS for this grant, the cumulative cost, you'll need to add up the state 2251 costs from the 2020 program year on WeatherWorks, add those to the 2021 grant titled State Carryover 2251. So again, cash reflect requests for these two grants should reflect costs from both the PY20 and the PY21 portions of the grants mentioned above. As I said before, final means final, and by this we're saying that please don't submit your costs, your screenshots of your final costs for the 2020 program year until you are sure they're final. If you do need to make some changes, please notify us, because what can happen is what can happen, it can result in inaccurate tracking of your costs in WeatherWorks and could cause you to overspend your grant, because if you increase the costs in 2020 and we have set up a 2021 grant in WeatherWorks that is equal to your unspent 2020 grant at the time you submitted your final cost, if you increase your final costs on 2020, we've now put a grant in 2021 that will make you exceed what you really have available on GRS. So please be cautious, make sure your costs are final before you submit them. And if you do encounter a situation that requires your final 2020 WeatherWorks costs to be changed after you've submitted the final, please contact OEA before making any changes. We will work with you to help ensure that the costs are properly adjusted to ensure that the carryover budgets in WeatherWorks 2020 plus the 2021 properly reflect your actual costs and the funding that you have available per your GRS grant. If you have any questions about this process as you're going along, please feel free to contact OCA, and we will be providing a broadcast regarding this process as well. So I thank you for listening today. Have a good day.